Welcome to FinFactor. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Dry Run Cash Flow Forecasting Software, where we help the office of the CFO leave spreadsheets behind and model everything from cash flow through to complex scenarios with clarity and control. And joining me today is Jim Harris of Western Computer, where they match mid-market businesses with effective ERP systems. And today we'll dig into some of the key trouble areas that plague manufacturers and importers that can be addressed with the right ERP, but only when executed correctly. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thanks, Blaine. Good to be here.
So before the show, we actually started chatting a little bit about some of the common problems that plague manufacturers. And I know you talked about COGS being one of them, and how if things are set up incorrectly, it can be obviously no value to the company, but if it's done right, it can be a massive asset. What are some of the problems that you see with manufacturers?
Yeah, so two things I've seen this year, and we focus Western Computer on Microsoft ERPs, both Business Central and Finance and Supply Chain. So we're really aligned with them. We're doing it for 38 years as a company, so we're very familiar with everything Microsoft. And two of the topics, and I'm the food and beverage specialist. Two of the topics that I've spent most of the time on this year are tariffs and then the impact on imports. I do a lot of companies that do wine and spirits where they're importing out of Europe and other countries, and a lot of systems, if they don't have the ability to not only apply the tariff, but also break down what's in a container properly to the bottle or case or unit level, people are making a lot of guesses on their cost of goods, and obviously that has a huge impact as you go down through the supply chain with figuring out what's your revised pricing going to be. Things like freight, the dollar's changed a lot, so there's a lot of conversations around cost of goods sold when it comes to importing. The other place I've spent a lot of time on this year is in food manufacturing. A lot of bakeries that I've been dealing with and bottling companies, they don't have software or ways to collect the data at the batch level. So let's say you do a batch of soda or a batch of energy drinks or bread or whatever it is. If you're not really measuring that batch in a super detailed way, very hard as a CFO when it rolls back up to have a really good feel for your cost of goods sold. And that impacts obviously everything because you don't know how to price, you don't know what your margins are. So all those things are in place. So we have partners that help with that. We also do a lot with our own team, but it really requires a lot of effort up front to get the change management in place, to get those teams on the floor to do those changes, but also on the accounting side to make sure you have software that can adapt to imported products in containers with the tariffs and stuff. So Glenn, when you invited me to the show, these are the two topics that came top of mind because I've just spent so much time this year talking about both of those.
Yeah, and it's topics that we hear from all different angles every day. Like as you sort of alluded to, it's a different time right now, isn't it? Like there's just a much higher level of volatility when you're talking about how dramatically the changes can be from batch to batch. Like that seems to be a pretty big difference today. I imagine the companies are there's a lot of legacy companies that have been sitting there saying, okay, we got systems, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And now they're saying, no, we're not fine. We really need to get a better understanding at a much more granular level of what our costs are and what our margins are like. What do you say when they come to you and say, we got to get this up running like now? Because I'm sure there's got to be a real pressure to get things going, but there's still, I'm guessing, a long timeline to actually do it right and get it set up right.
Yeah, it's a good 5 to 6 months on most of these projects because you have to get the analysis and design done, and then you really have to spend a lot of time with the team to transition them into a new system. Honestly, Blaine, you and I have the same enemy, and it's a Microsoft product called Excel. So a lot of people have done just a ton of workarounds in Excel. They usually have somebody internally that can make the magic happen with it, but it's a great design tool, but it's not a great process tool. As you've seen with your product with Dry Run, like it's great to build a model, but if you're the only one in the company that can actually run the model, it doesn't scale. And there's also so many chances for error with a wrong formula or wrong entry into a certain spot. So we see a lot of that. Like on the shop floor, one of the things they have to do is QA. So I've seen some really sophisticated processes where they measure everything that they're doing, and then they just put that Excel spreadsheet up into like a SharePoint account, which is great. but there's no reporting on that. There's no way to look at things over time. It's a silo, and you can go for, if you get audited, you can go find that QA slip, but it doesn't help you actually analyze your business very well. So you're doing a lot of guesswork. And when I talk to the financial people, let's say at a bakery, they often underestimate the variances between batches. When you start really showing them the data, they're like, "Oh, wow, our estimates were from a year ago, and we haven't updated those." Or, these inputs of like flour and eggs and everything went up in the last year, and then they came back down. Did they adjust to go with it? There's just so many variables that you have to consider, and I think Excel is one of the reasons that people feel like they're in control of their processes when they're actually not.
It almost seems like they're drowning in data, so they think that they're looking at all the data. We've seen spreadsheets. I've mentioned this on another show not too long ago, but we with the record we've seen so far was someone that we were talking with that had 52 tabs like, in their spreadsheet, trying to maintain all 52 and have it roll up 51 and have it roll into 52 as some sort of visualization the management team is supposed to be able to use. Epically hard to keep up to date. Obviously, there's going to be problems and broken equations and things through it. You can't get everything right in that much data. So the I think the outcome is really attractive to these teams, but I can also see it's kind of scary for them to go, okay, we're going to change everything we've done. Like you said, we think we have it under control. How do you guys sort of speak to that and help that, like you said, that shift in mindset and shift in culture to be able to say, okay, we're going to leave these processes behind and try something new.
I think it's a cycle. We see people in basically five stages. The first one is they're just trying to get an idea of the next 2 years if they want to invest, what the budget's going to be. So it's high level. And we see people like getting more granular. They want to do maybe an analysis phase where they look at to see what requirements they have. Like we have a tool that has 3,000 requirements on a website that makes it a fit or a gap. And usually people go through about 1,000 of those questions and get down to 400 or 500 requirements, but there's still gaps. And that's the other thing about software. It's getting better, but there's always going to be gaps, and you have to figure out: do we bring something like dry run in for your financial budgeting, or do you bring in like you're doing, let's say, EDI? Do you bring a partner in to do that? So there's a lot of thought that needs to go into it, and then we get people that really are in the third stage, which is now they're going to narrow it down. They're picking between maybe one or two products. Now the fourth stage is okay. They pick the product. Now they got to figure out who are the right people to work with. We hope it's Western Computer, but there's a lot of other Microsoft partners out there. And then the one actually I've had a good year on this year, unfortunately, is we have partners that have failed, and then that customer is looking for a replacement, and they come to us and
Mhm.
say, "Hey, we're a year into this thing, and it's not going really well. We thought these folks understood the business better than they did." And so those are the five layers that we see. And for each of those, whatever stage customers in, we meet them where they are and try to figure out what level of detail they need to get to the next phase.
And I want to dig into that a little bit because I think you've talked about a little bit or alluded to it. Um, I think with obviously a business in the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, a lot of data is looked at at a very high level. But like you kind of were pointing out, a lot of the dollars that are lost, wins and losses, are actually right down at a batch level or at a product level. I'm just curious how you speak to those teams about the value of that granularity, or what level of detail makes sense, but then how do you actually make it actionable in sort of a reporting scheme so it actually is effective.
Yeah, I think part of that is in the analysis phase, just to show them where the data is, because in both manufacturing and distribution, it's all on the floor. You can see the
Mm.
physical boxes or cases or units, or the the inputs, like say flour and sugar and what, like all those inputs going in. You can see them coming in. You're paying for those, but then it's like, what's the yield on that? Are we getting what we're expecting? There's a lot of equipment that goes into it. On the distribution side, it's how much goes out, but how much comes back? It expires, or it's the wrong product. So there's a lot of variance there that people don't always take into account. And also on the If you're selling to bigger retailers, there's also rebates that you can get, you can apply back from your suppliers. So there's a whole world of rebates that's either people calculate well or they don't. So there's
Mm.
just a lot of places to honestly lose margin points and dollars. So once you see what those are and what the value is, it's pretty easy to get people's attention. I think the harder part is back to Excel. I think anyone that designs a 52 tab spreadsheet cannot envision it being an easier system doing it another way. They just
Yeah.
that's if you're like, oh, well, we'll get that person to help you with, let's say, the implementation of your products. Like they're not the right person. They just they can find all the reasons it won't work, and they just cannot because they would have built a better system rather than a 52 tab spreadsheet if they could have done it. They're just
Yeah.
not that kind of person.
Well, and it's just not built for it. It's just, and I agree. It's sometimes it's some of the challenges we have is, um, you can see sometimes it's almost like th- this, kind of that easy. Yes, it really is. We can get to your data and do stuff with it, and it's pretty seamless. Um, and it is like, yeah, I think you alluded to this idea of change management. I would love to dig into that a little bit because that is such a massive challenge. Change management from even if the people in the C-suite see the value of what you're doing, you have all of these layers all the way down to people that are inputting data and are involved on the floor and everywhere else. You need the entire team working together to make everything effective and have it all up to date. What are some of the things you've seen that work and don't work for that change management across a large team?
Um, Obviously you have like the early adopters that love it and that want change. You have the kind of the cautious skeptics, but they still want to make it better. But I think 70% of the folks are just like, what does this mean for my job? How am I going to contribute? This is what I do all day. Now it's going to be automated. And they don't realize there's so many other higher value things they could do that would make them more valuable, but it's really hard to get people. So I just find there's a lot of resistance, and it's as leaders in these companies, they have to be understanding how much time it's going to take. It's going to be 10 times more than they think to get people on board. But I think you
Mhm.
also have to realize that there's going to be some people that just leave, and that's probably not a bad thing to replace them with somebody that's looking at it in a more modern way. And I think you have to accept that you're not going to keep everybody when you do a big change like this for one reason or another. So, um,
Yeah.
but now, like the cool thing about this plane is like now with the cloud ERPs, you're probably never going to have to do it again. Like,
Yeah.
because they update 2 or 3 times a year, so you're always on the latest version, and so that
Mhm.
gives you the ability then to add new things, plug things in, like your product, like other ISVs that we work with, and so you're not resetting back to zero again or having to say, well, I've got this one system that the guy's out of business now, and it's in my building, the servers in my building, all that goes away with this. And I tell people if you're really at the highest end, if you're not going with SAP, Oracle, or Microsoft, or the mid tier, Microsoft, Oracle, NetSuite, you're probably wasting your money because those companies are investing so much money. I mean, billions in these systems, and then you layer on AI. Like, I don't know why. If you just go to one of those systems, then you're more bulletproof than you would if you don't. So,
Yeah, and
um,
we do hear, like we come across businesses all the time that are on, of industry or vertical specific ERPs that have been around for a long time. As you talk with the team, they did something really well, or a lot of times it's the only one that could do X back 10 years ago or whatever. Um, but boy, they're a lot of them are starting to show their age because, like you said, some companies are keeping it up, and there's new releases every couple of weeks. A little something's rolling out. And it feels like other ones are sort of sitting on their haunches a little bit, and just like, let's just take in the money and keep our costs low, and we'll see how long we can drag this out.
yeah,
Um, so I'm assuming people are coming to you, and they're coming from oftentimes from a legacy product, even a desktop product, and um, like you said, they're likely using Excel, but maybe with some sort of ERP. What are some of the tactics you use to be able to kind of show them that it's like, hey, you can do so much more with this ERP and with plugging in other products and putting it all together and getting a holistic solution rather than forcing you back into the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I think you're right about there's a lot of legacy software companies that are not going to be able to keep up when they get to the cloud because unless you're going to the Microsoft App Store and putting your product on there and making it easy to buy, it's going to be hard for you to get someone to bolt you on to that system that's never done it before. So there's definitely some challenges there, and you can't just use Excel or CSV or text files. You're going to have to use the APIs. You're going to have to get more modern. There's a lot more complexity there, but there's a lot of advantages to that if you're a software company. So there's going to be a lot of companies left behind. I think that you're right there. 10, 15 years ago, there were a lot of times you'd pick one software platform, let's say for your baking software or for your warehouse management that did one or two things that you really needed. Like for beer companies, it was always kegs. Like, so they're taking kegs back and there's a whole return process with the deposit. And there was a couple of software companies that did that really well. Well, guess what? A lot of them can do that now. And it gives you 50 other things it does better. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of transition that happens over that. I also find too, like there's companies like yours you can just bolt on if you don't have the full functionality you need. And then it's not that hard now to build extensions on to, let's say, Business Central, Microsoft Business Central, to do what you need, that one extra, field or layer, not that hard to keep up. So I think the days of custom software are pretty much gone. So it's either you
Mhm.
do maybe small tweaks, but you're never going to build your own again, I don't think. Or
I just
you
can't
bolt
see
on
it.
a product like yours that has
Yeah.
specialization. That's where it's going. And then with AI,
Yeah.
who knows what it's going to look like? I mean, a lot of these things with AI, you don't even need a report. You just ask the question and get a result back. Like, what are my top selling items? What are my lowest margin items? Just give me a list. Like, I don't need to have a report and dig through it. Like, just give me the answer.
Yeah, I was actually that's where exactly where I was gonna go next is like AI is very early in its effective life, I would say, or past early
It's only
adopter life.
three years ago in 2 weeks for GPT coming out. Like, that's
Yeah.
staggering. They have 700 million users in 3 years. It's nuts.
Yeah. It hit this weird tipping point because like AI, I know that, I've read about researchers. I think they were working back in the 70s on AI. Obviously did not have any of the but the idea was there, the philosophy was there, and then it just suddenly like was like a light switch it turned on. And it's overwhelmingly like being used throughout business everywhere. What I see though too is it's the early like the chat GPTs and copilots and that are good generalists, but you're starting to see now the specialists coming out. And I think that's where it gets really interesting, really exciting. It's not bad, garbage in, garbage out, some good in, some good out. It's little experts seem to be kind of a bit of that next wave. How do you see AI? Like, what do you see today where it's having the most impact on your customers, and also where do you see it in the next 5 years evolving and going?
Oh, great question. So I'm biased towards Microsoft because that's what I sell. Microsoft's done an amazing job building Microsoft Copilot, their AI tools, right into the systems, whether it's Excel, Word, but also obviously the ERP systems they have. So that helps a lot. So like, and they've had this technology, like an order comes in by email, it can just read the email. You have an agent that reads the email and just converts that order into the system, maybe for approval, maybe not, depending on the size of it and other rules that you can put into place. So I think it's gonna be easier to build rules, it's gonna be less coding. There's the world's gone more no code stuff where you
Mhm,
just tell it what you want and it builds it for you. And I think that's where it's going with software in general. Like a lot of developers, even on our team, they use AI tools to help them just write the code or read the code. I mean,
mhm,
it's gotten so much easier to just summarize data to go faster, whether it's a legal document, an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, I upload things all the time, like make sense of this for me or where, highlight three things. So I think there's going to be a lot more. I think people are going to get better at prompting. It's not like you're typing into Google. You have to give it more information. I joke it's like having like an intern that's at Princeton that's just like freaking so smart. If you just give that, you know, intern just a little guidance, they're going to give you a great answer.
Yeah, but I've found that myself. I jump to different platforms, always testing them out, trying different ones. Um, and it's the quality of the output is generally the quality of the question I put in, and generally it's the detail and being very specific and predicting where you're opening it too wide, right? And um, but it's showing so quickly to be a really valuable tool for people. Now, I'm firmly on the side of I don't think it's going to replace everybody's job in the next 36 months, and the only people working will be actors, or probably not even that. Like there's one group that's going to have a job. No, I think it's going to be really valuable assistant for people, but I'm firmly on the side of you still need people, but it can be a absolutely effective resource, and at times it can also probably not be that helpful too, I suppose, if it's used in the wrong context too.
Well, it's only going to get better with the amount of trillions of dollars going into it and
Mhm.
use cases going up. One of the things I want to point out though, with obviously there's sensitive data if you're a CFO or financial person. One of the cool things Microsoft has is the work versus web. In the work, when if you let's say upload a spreadsheet that has your customers in it or your pricing, or a confidential, document like an NDA or a sales agreement or something like that, um, it will use all the tools of AI, but without putting that data out into the model. So from a privacy standpoint, it's a really big win because
Yeah.
you can still get all the tools without exposing the data.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people the absolute number one hesitation is that really not understanding necessarily what's going up into the ether and what's staying private, and obviously it can be massively damaging if the wrong thing goes up, but also really limiting if nothing goes up. So there's you can tell it's still early, but this is moving. We're probably a similar vintage. You were around when the web arrived on the scene. The adoption of AI is infinitely faster than I think than the adoption of the web, and even kind of the crash early on in the internet and all the businesses. I think there were also a lot of lessons learned from that. There's still probably going to be some hard lessons and a few bubbles here and there, but it doesn't feel the same to me. People are adopting quickly. The technology is evolving really rapidly, but it seems to be evolving uh, with some substance behind it. Rather than, pest.com was a domain name and that's all they needed. That was literally, I remember at the time, it's like, hey, own pest.com. Well, you're going to be a billionaire because everyone will come and buy from you. Turns out you need more than that, right? It feels like those mistakes aren't necessarily being made this time around.
Well, but you look at the companies that, if Google has a quarter with 100 billion in sales and 70 billion in profit, it's like, of course they can put $100 billion into something.
Yeah.
Those didn't exist 25 years ago. Those companies were all just doing debt or equity and didn't really, like you said, just had a domain name. Where now it's like these companies are spitting off so much cash, they almost have to do something big because they can't just give it back to their investors. They need to go find the next big thing, and that's what they're doing with AI. So everyone's got
Mhm.
that. I think I think it's much different. I think people are saying it's gonna be a bubble. That bubble will be absorbed so fast. There's just so many more use cases we haven't got to. Because as soon as we get to robotics, which includes cars, which includes home robotics, business robotics, and the demand that's going to put on AI, there's no end in sight for that investment dollar being creating a ROI. I think across the
Yeah,
board.
it's
So
amazing how quickly it's the world is changing. I actually saw 2 Tesla test cars with no drivers drive past me last night, and I'm like, "Oh, that's the first." We've
Yeah.
seen Waymos all the time, but that's the first Tesla ones I saw go driving by me, and it's
Well,
changing
that's gonna be
fast.
it's gonna be a really interesting case because Waymo's using lidar radar, so they can see basically in the dark, where Tesla's using just radar cameras. And Tesla's got, I think Waymo did like 10 million miles. Tesla does that in the morning with Teslas, like globally. Like took them
Yeah.
8 years to get there. So like Tesla's got more video of real life driving than anyone. So to be able to build the models off that is going to be amazing. But it could be one technology wins over the other. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like. But yeah, the next 10 years are going to be amazing for healthcare, for technology, for transportation, all those things. But if you're sitting here today, I think a lot of legacy, like with Microsoft, they have GP, which used to be Great Plains, and Microsoft Division. Well, they've end of life those in 2028. So you've got basically 2 years from now before you need to get off those or not be supported. Maybe you could get by another year or so after that. But by 2030, everyone's got to be in the cloud. So
Mhm.
if you're looking to make the move, it's good to start now. Get it in your budget, figure out what it's going to be. But once you have the core system in, Blaine, you can make so many other choices. You can work in the warehouse. You can do budgeting better. You can do all your other processes better. But I see a lot of people like they're on hold for years because we don't want to invest anymore in this core system because we know it's going to be outdated. It's already outdated. And so they
Yeah.
just freeze in their technology and their competitors aren't doing that. Like you're going to get left behind from a cost and a margin and a, customer, interaction. It's going to hold you back. So
Yeah, and I think what we see in the business world today is just this volatility and unknowns and unease that wasn't there, 10 years ago, was barely there 5 years ago. It's been there's just there are always questions about what's coming around the corner, and as you said, with the tariffs and things like that, that's today, maybe not 6 months from now, maybe not a year from now, who knows, right? Um, and so businesses and finance leaders, like you said, there's a lot of reasons. There's end of life for a lot of their existing systems. The advancement in the systems now is accelerating, which means if you're on a legacy system, even if you think it's working and they're kind of keeping up to date, is it giving you the information you need? And the information you need needs to be more up to date, accurate, insightful, so that you can actually make the right moves that you need to make. How should so if you're on a finance team out there, how should they get hold of you, and who should come talk with you to be able to get them past that point and into something that's modern and ready to roll?
yeah, like I said, we have those 5 stages. So we have this great survey that'll give you, to answer 20 questions will give you like a range of what we think it's going to be. We have a more detailed discovery process that takes a week or so that'll really give you a good fit gaps because the gaps are where the problems are. Like everyone's got some secret sauce for their business. They do a little differently. Not every system, no system's going to have all those things. How do you solve those gaps? Because that's where your risk is. But yeah, if you westerncomputer.com, we've been around a long time. You can find us. We do manufacturing, CPG, food and beverage, some nonprofit, and also some financial companies. So we've got a good range of products, but for me, it's food and beverage. And I'm excited about the chance to talk to you and your audience, Blaine.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. This was a really interesting conversation. And once we started to get into AI, I know we could have veered off and gone on for another hour, but really interesting conversation and a lot of insight, and very timely because companies, if they haven't been making the move already, definitely have to start making the move to modernize their systems. And if you're on a finance team out there, if you're buried in spreadsheets, especially doing cash flow and spreadsheets, we're going to help you deliver something to the management team that they're going to be able to draw those insights from. That's going to be a really crystal clear visualization for them. It's going to be accurate. It's going to be fast. It's going to be up to date. And it's going to allow you and your team to spend more time on valuable tasks rather than wrangling a spreadsheet. Just come and visit us at dryrun.com.